Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Welcome everybody to the Safina Society Nothing But Facts live stream on an extremely warm and sunny Tuesday afternoon, a day that in which we've all been following these crazy and wacky riots. Wacky is not really the right word for it, but they're getting pretty nasty in the UK, and the number one page that I'm following for this is actually Dili Hussein. And he's showing basically, I don't know where he's getting his clips from, but he's got a lot of clips, and their clips are going everywhere of how crazy it is. But I guess I'm not surprised. Reason being is that people don't get replaced without putting up a fight. And that's the narrative that people are sold, is that, there is a replacement happening, a population replacement. That's the narrative that's happening. But I would actually venture to think that this is more likely to be a cooked up Mosaad Zionist conflict through Tommy Robinson, who, if you don't know who he is, he's a white nationalist who's been agitating for decades now. And Omar, why don't you pull up some footage? I mean, we all know the pictures. You all seen it. It's not so hard to find that Tommy Robinson is a guy who is on IDF, Mosaad, whatever you want to call it. He's on their payroll. He does not have a profession, yet he is on holiday, and he's living off of this nonsense, posting and agitating. He's been doing this for years. The EDL is his organization, English Defense League. His English Defense League, I think at one point he renamed it the English and Jewish Defense League. But he is a Zionist operative. There's no doubt about that. He's an operative for Israel. Recently, England had started stepping away from Israel. Next day, they got civil war going on in their country. Literally, not even 24 hours. Maybe it's just they got opportunistic when that things were getting inflamed, and then they added more gas to it. Musk is another one of their, I can't say he's an operative for them, but he's definitely on that sphere, and he's somebody who poured gas on the fire by doing that. I was surprised by Andrew Tate, but, well, whatever. Right is right and wrong is wrong, and his take on this, he's backpedaling a lot on this. But anyway, I'm not a commentator on what other people are saying. But nonetheless, you go to Dili Hussein's Twitter is where you got a lot of information. I mean, there's information everywhere. But ultimately, that's my take on it. It's more of a Israel benefiting from this more than anybody else. The people who are rioting are poor whites against poor subcontinent, Desi, African. There's probably much less, not probably, but definitely much less Arabs there. But it's mainly South Asians versus whites. That's really what's going on. And I have to say there is a bit of an irony, and a lot of people don't like to hear this, especially white converts. I know they get sometimes offended by this because they are trying to win over or make peace between both sides, but I just simply can't help noticing the boomerang of time. Sometimes it takes 80 years to come back, but it does come back, and it comes back on innocent people. when you have an old British man, working in a little shop, saying, these people don't belong here. We don't want them here. We just don't want all these brown people in our country. Well, I got to say that the brown people that you don't like, their grandfathers were saying the exact same thing when your grandfathers were there in their country. In India, in the 1920s, in Egypt, they had a revolt against the British. The Sudan. What do you think Sudanese people were saying 80 years ago? Get these British people out of our countries. So the thing is about when you do deeds, they don't often come around. The reward or punishment doesn't always come around right away. It sometimes takes 80 years for the reward and punishment or the consequences to come to fruition. That doesn't say that anyone's innocent or guilty except the original people who did this stuff, right? But those are the ones who are guilty. And their grandkids are suffering the brunt of it. So, does anyone deny that the irony of that is you can't ignore it? That's a good picture, Omar. It's a very good picture.
You saw this one? Actually, this one.
Well, that's ChatGPT, right?
Yeah, look at this one.
That's good. Who did that?
The AI.
That is a good one. That's a good one. Omar, of course, is making the thumbnail as we speak. I get to watch him making the thumbnail. So that's my personal opinion is that it's more this far right clash between the EDL British and English nationalist guys and Muslims. It's more of a cooked up thing than a real thing. Obviously, it's real on the ground, and it's real the anger. But I think that Loki had a what is his real name, by the way? Whatever his real name is. He had a good point. He said, don't think that stuff is organic in today's world. Things can't become organic that quick and just spread that quick. There are higher ups pulling strings to ensure that it looks organic. And he called this term astroturfing, which is where something looks organic, but in fact it's not. And that's what I think this is. And there are some pitiful, terrible scenes. And that's not going to go away for a long time. There's going to be a lot of hate. There's going to be a lot of hate for a long time, unfortunately. And there was one guy who we saw that a Daisy boy chasing after 4 white guys, screaming like he's crazy. So they ran away thinking this guy's crazy or something. Then some other Daisy kids came seeing, hey, it's 4-on-1. And they isolated one of those guys and threw him in a ditch. It was like they were digging for it's as if they were making a sewer line or something. They were putting something underground. It was filled with polluted water. They threw him in there, kicked him in there. Nasty stuff. Again, I'm watching right now a mob of patriots with the Hussein site lynched a lone black man. What does he mean by lynched? Because he didn't get lynched. They did, I guess, metaphorically lynched him, but he didn't really lynch him. They're teaming up on him. He ran away. He fought pretty courageously, I have to say. And I gotta ask a question, like, is the unemployment that high amongst these guys that they have nothing else to do? Like, is this thing gonna die off starting today? Because people go to work, or are there actually just unemployed but they complaining that they're taking over our jobs. What jobs exactly do the British want to do? These immigrants are they work as janitors, a lot of them. A lot of these, they're cooking, they're cutting potatoes, they're opening restaurants. What job is so amazing out there that's being taken from you? So Omar, what are the takes that you have? Because I summarized my opinion on this. My main opinion on this is that this is it's cooked up. It's cooked up for sure. Huh? No, the whole thing is, yeah, the ingredients are there, but it's gassed up by Tommy Robinson and his Zionist backing. It's cooked up for sure. Like, they're gassing this for Israeli interests.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree.
And to punish England for taking a step back from Israel. The United States has taken a step back as well by selecting a VP who was not anti-Palestinian, to put that.
And they're lashing out due to their own failures as well. Like, you look at, like we were just talking about recently before the stream, in the U.S. specifically, the highest in terms of success, Pakistani immigrants, Indian immigrants, people like this, they're extremely successful when they come here.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, you go to the doctor, half the time it's probably going to be a Pakistani or an Indian, right? And so I think a lot of these people, as you were talking about, they seem very unemployed, or like they have so much free time on their hands. And it seems like immigrants are they're successful. Like, they're coming to your country, they're actually building your country up, right? I mean, if it wasn't for these immigrants that your policymakers let in, your country would be nothing, you know.
Well, let's take a look at the basic history. Why are so many immigrants let in? Well, it's because of Hitler and what he did in draining the British population through war. You had World War I, you had World War II, you had so much of your far more administrators were outside of England than inside of England. Far more during the colonial period of time. So you had a population go down, and you needed workers quickly. You didn't have time to create a population boost through childbirth. So they just imported all these immigrants to come in and work. And that's what they were doing.
You built your country. And another thing that I think you noticed, especially on Twitter, and this irks me a lot, and with like Trump supporters and all that, is it seems like, and this has been the case for a long time, that people need a hero and they need a villain. Everything needs to be black and white for most people. Yeah. So that's why, like, one of the things that after Trump got like assassinated or almost assassinated, he like was solidified as like the Messiah of the U.S. Right?
Yeah, totally.
And like they're like, this is the Messiah. It's a miracle. Like 0. whatever chance that he survived. And so their hero was established. Yep. And then they need a villain, of course. Yeah. Right. And so the Muslims right now are being pinned as a villain.
You got to be a villain, and the Muslims right now are the easiest villain. Not to say that nothing wrong has been done by the Muslims in the riots, and Sheikh Asrar warned everyone not to go out to these marches. He said marches, what I think he meant is riots, or the marches turn into riots, because the brother said, hold on a second, this sounds like a madkhali. But no, he's not going to march against oppression. What he's not denying that. What I think he was forbidding as his fatwa to the people was, don't be involved with the riots. There are other ways to be involved. Like, there are videos showing Muslims protecting their masajid, or just protecting the region and protecting the area. Then a fight breaks out. That's not rioting. Right? That's not rioting.
I mean, the people need a boogeyman. Right? So it's very easy to just say, this is the problem, this is the evil, and this is the cure, and this is how we're going to go forward, rather than actually sitting down about the complicated nature of society and the underlying reasons as to why we're like this. And it's like people
100%.
People just want a hero and a villain, like, that's it.
Yeah, 100%. Whatchamacallit, all the audio is good, right? Okay, good. Top prosecutor considers terrorism charges over those who are, caught doing anything, which is, I guess that technically makes sense, because to get your political view across through violence is the definition of terrorism. And that's exactly what they're doing. Right.
The word terrorism means nothing at all. It has zero meaning.
It's become like that, yeah. It's become like that.
I think it's always like, it just has no meaning. It's like one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Exactly. So that's exactly how they view themselves. Fighting to take back England. Listen, by the looks of some of these rioters, if England was in your hand, you would destroy it far worse than what it is now. Because these guys, just the way they talk, sound extremely, well, they're just sound dumb. Completely uneducated and dumb, to put it simply. You wouldn't trust anything with them. Not a household or a bar even, let alone a country, to be trusted with them.
I like this quote a lot. I forgot who said it, but it was like, the beginning of a downfall of civilization starts with like the decline of language, something like that. It was something related to that.
It's always connected. The decline of language is always connected to the decline of, it is a reflection of the decline of education. Yeah. And therefore, and it produces a decline of discourse.
Yeah.
All right, a decline of discourse, and the discourse just becomes tribal, and the telltale sign of a civil war to come to a nation is when allegiances are merely tribal and not ideological. Because if they're ideological, then the battlefield is words. But if it's tribal, it's physical space. And there was a study done over a period of years on the last 15 civil wars to occur. And they were looking for the patterns, and that's the pattern that they found.
Really?
So the pattern that they found was that the civil war was not instigated or established on ideological grounds. Is if it's ideological, then people tend to be mixed. But if it's tribal being, let's say, Muslim Christian, or let's say Bosnian and the Serbs, or North South, or East West, where it's not in your hands what you are. You can't convince somebody to be on the other side. When you have a nation where their war is ideological and they convince people to be on the other side, then they don't fight and they live amongst each other and their battle is in words. But once this devolves into something that nobody can control, such as merely being from the north, or merely being brown, or merely being Serb or Bosnian, or Christian or Muslim, just born into it, that's much more of a predictor that there will be a civil war between these two people. Because it's just, at this point, it's a matter of space. They need to have space. So here in England, that's what we have. Nobody can choose which side they're on. You're either born English or you're born Desi, right?
It's buzzwords. Like, I can probably count on my fingers, like the word terrorism, woke, and like there's just certain words out there that you just throw out, and it's like completely rhetorical. It has no actual meaning to it. And that's what people are fighting about. And the same thing I mentioned a while back about intra-Muslim discussions and debates. Yeah. It's like, okay, like this whole, okay, what does that mean? Yeah. So we both agree on the idea, but it's just the word. So it's like, oh, you're this. Yeah. It's like, but that person could be more Sufi than the other guy. That's true. It's just a word.
It's a word.
Right? So we're just fighting words nowadays.
We have a phrase for that. لا مشاحة في الاصطلاح. Check this out. لا مشاحة في الاصطلاح means there should never be argumentation over terminology. It's the madmoon, or the definition. Twitter, I believe, and Musk himself are very close to this. They are almost Zionist operatives in a sense, at a high level, ever since his meeting with Ben Shapiro and Netanyahu, when he got spanked in public in front of them all, everybody. He's now boosting every divisive far right post that you see out there. So end wokeness, which I overall like, except on this issue, he just boosted them. And they have a post here that says the UK is no longer safe for Englishmen, where there's a guy about to punch an officer. You can't really tell what the guy is, whether he's white or brown, or he looks white to me. Doesn't look Desi. So, but nonetheless, he is constantly boosting all of these guys. Okay. You know what I am actually getting off of in Twitter? I'm getting off of all the inter-Muslim and Islamic debates. Like, it's just like so sort of absurd to be, to be on this. Remember recently I told you the true reflection of a person is in his children, right? That's the true reflection of how you spent your life. Here you have Elon Musk's daughter going after him. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it just goes to suffice it to say she's calling her dad a hypocrite. She's went off against him, saying that basically everything he says is a lie. He is a big hater of Arabs and Muslims from when she was 6 years old. She is actually a he, biologically is transgender, and probably why Musk has sort of pinballed the other way. because he saw his son, and he used to say, basically, why are you so feminine, right? And him and his son basically went separate ways, and his son became a she and changed her name to Vivian. So now she's all over him now, and it's making the news that she's completely sort of exposing him, I guess you could say, right? And that's, again, goes to show the true nature of a person. It's in his house. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ said, when a man dies, if 40 people can testify for his goodness, then believe that Allah will forgive him, and inshallah he'll enter paradise. Then he decreased that until finally it's his family, and then he decreased that to his wife, because it's taken into account people who don't know a lot of people. Like, not everyone knows 40 people, right? Not everyone has a lot of friends. Not everybody's going to have a lot of children. So he keeps decreasing it and decreasing it and decreasing it. If you export armaments, don't complain about importing refugees, says somebody. Yep, that's true. What goes around comes around does not mean that the recipients of the negative impact are guilty. They're not guilty. But it's what your forefathers did. Didn't you benefit from what your forefathers did? Like, you benefited so much wealth and a monarchy from what your forefathers did. Everyone's benefiting, I would say, from what the last 2 generations. Some people say 7 generations. Some people say what you're born with is the result of 7 generations. Because when you think about the genetics, the geographic location, the interactions that your different grandparents had, and that you're going to reap 7 generations worth of consequences. That's what people say. It's like, it's not like religion. I'm just saying it's a commonly said thing, that you reap 7 generations worth of your circumstances. And that goes across the board. We're born into political circumstances that stink. But why? I didn't do anything about that. Well, who caused that? Probably the last 7 generations. Like my dad, his dad, his dad, his dad, his dad, his dad. Cumulatively, all of our dads were involved in producing the world that caused those wars and failures in wars and colonization and all those other things. So if you're born privileged or compromised, you owe it. You owe gratitude or blame 7 generations back. That's how life works.
When you have like a qadiyya in mantiq, right? Mm-hmm. Like what you're saying, it's not a moral judgment. You're making an observed. It's an observation. Yeah. So you saying that is not saying like, oh, it's justified.
Thank you very much. An observation is not. This guy is. Look at this. They study mantiq here and usul. Omar was not talking like this a year and a half ago. I guarantee you that. When he started, right? This is an observation is not a moral judgment. Okay. Let's make that clear. An observation is not a moral judgment. It's exactly what it is. Just an observation. You want to judge it, judge yourself, you judge yourself. But, okay. Muhammad Yasir al-Hanafi is Scottish, and he comments and he says, don't wear a mask and shout Allahu Akbar. Right? This is a political issue, he says, instigated by the far right, which is a puppet. Now they're controlled by the Mosaad and the Israelis, if you ask me. Second, if you have a great passion for calling towards a religion, then there is a time, place, and method. In addition, wisdom is a sine qua non for dawah. Your dawah will be rejected, and in fact, it will be blameworthy if your dawah causes a greater tribulation. I mean, the word Allahu Akbar was just going to become connected to something bad in the minds of people. Third, I vividly remember what the Bradford riots caused in 2001. Wearing masks does nothing but cast doubt on your objectives. We have nothing to hide. We can fulfill our objectives and defend our place of worship without exacerbating the already bad situation. Okay. Yeah, why are people wearing masks? Just to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe, I don't know, he works for some IT company, right? Or maybe he's front-facing in his corporation. So maybe that's why he's wearing a mask. But nonetheless, I sort of agree that the mask with Sayyiduna Allahu Akbar, you're actually doing a disservice to the word. Oh, Allahu A'lam, that's just an opinion. And Salman Yunus says, every normal man at some point in his life has the overwhelming urge to cosplay as a revolutionary or a mujahid. You know, people's emotions are inflamed when they see these things, so that's why they're doing this. Okay. We do want to do tafsir, but that is our goal today. We always read tafsir, and then we'll do Q&A, and then we'll wrap up. So those are my comments. And let's look at Robert Carter. He's also been a very good journalist in terms of putting stuff out there. He says, as a youngster, and this guy looks, I mean, he should be part of the Hitler Youth if you look at his picture. No, this guy lived 60 years ago. He's Hitler Youth, and there's no doubt about it. Just the image, I'm saying. Not his politics, I'm saying. Just the when you look at him physically. He says here, as a youngster, English nationalism and Islamophobia appealed to me. I was angry, lost, and uneducated. Now I am a Muslim. Alhamdulillah. I love life, people of all backgrounds. Stronger as a man. I'm a stronger man as a result. Islam is not a threat to the English. Islam pushes me to do good, be better human. I'm living proof Islam is a force for good and internal peace. Britain does face a dangerous threat, but it's not Islam. It's a far-right radicalization. Another guy said to me, hold on a second, if you guys love Islam so much, why don't you accept mass deportation of Muslims? If you are as you are, good, loyal, hard workers, and you're Pakistani, then you are improving Pakistan, right? Pakistan will be improved by a couple million hard workers. If you are, you love Pakistan so much, then go live in it. That's his argument, right? And Europe will be better off, and you'll be better off. Of course, it's just like sort of talking nonsense because people have families, people have lives, and you don't just pick up and leave like that. But I told him, like, you know, when it comes to mass deportation and stuff, he was a rabbi, so I mean, you should know all about that, because that's what Europeans did to you. Now he's calling for that to be done to Muslims. Now, some people are blind. There's no group of people that suffered more at the hands of the Europeans than the Jews. And now they're coming along and siding with their old bullies. They're so happy that their old bully has found another target and that life has changed, and now the original victim now has a ton of money. The old bully has gotten old and doesn't have that much money and needs their help and is now really being controlled by the old victim. And they're more than happy to watch the same thing happening to Muslims. That's the result of somebody who was tested with a tribulation and failed it miserably. You get tested with something. You get tested with a tribulation where you were once victimized. Now you've got the opportunity to victimize somebody else, and you do victimize them. That means you didn't handle your tribulation properly. If you handled it properly, and you were in fact an innocent victim, but you handled the tribulation the way Allah would love you to handle it, in a good way. And it's not only Muslims who handle tribulations in good ways. A lot of people handle things well. What's the sign that they handled it right and they passed the test that Allah put them through? And that other people, you know, caused them to suffer. It's that when the tables are turned now and someone else is suffering, they help that person rather than turning and siding with the bully. Right? So I said, listen, it's too late. Too many millions of Muslims in England and France and all these other countries. Unless they pull out from the playbook of the old European monarchs, dig a ditch, throw everyone in it, right? Put them in ovens and Holocaust them, right? So, just to show how people react and how miserable they become when they don't handle the original tribulation properly. When they're put in the same position as the bully, they become that, and they support it. Nonetheless, it is an interesting question to examine. And we would simply say, listen, they probably would be better off, but it's too late. Yeah, Muslim would be better off if his own countries were better, but they're not. And that's the wisdom of Allah. And then someone else pitched in and say, well, it's too late for that. What about British Muslims? What about native European Muslims? Whatever native means, because societies are changing all the time. And he said, yeah, they could stay. But here's the thing, and Muslims go into countries, in this case as migrants. In the past, they went as maybe conquerors. And they stay long enough for Islam to trickle down to the regular people. And that usually takes maybe, I would say, maximum 150 years for a significant population portion of the natives to become Muslim generation after generation. And Egypt, for example, let's take a look at Egypt. When Muslims went in as conquerors to Egypt, the population of Muslims in Egypt reached 50% in 300 years. So for the first 300 years, from Amr ibn al-As, the population of Muslims was, and they were in power, let alone not in power. Not in power probably take longer, but they were in power, and it took 300 years just to hit 50% population of Muslims. I would say by 20%, you're firmly established. No one's removing you. You're safe. If 20% of, let's say, native culture are now Muslim, then Islam there is safe. You can't expel it. And that 20 or eradicate it. That 20% probably will take 100 years. Maybe more than that. And that's where I think we're going. Eventually, it'll take, by the end of this century, there will be enough white European Muslims that this whole discussion will be over. But right now, Muslim is synonymous with immigrant and Desi and black and brown. And that's why they're able to conflate Islamophobia and racism. But eventually there will come a day in the year, what are we now, 2024, give it 75 years is a lot of time. A lot of bad things could happen in 75 years. But give it 75 years and it's the year 2100. By the year 2100, there will be so many mixed race, born, intermarried, converts, convert married convert, second, third, fourth generation European Muslims that there will be no discussion anymore. And that's where we're headed. That's really where we're headed. Let's read a little bit of actually, you know what? Let's just go straight to the QA because today I'm bouncing at 2. Unfortunately, I have to leave you all and go at 2 o'clock. Believe it or not, we do have Darul Fath. Darul Fath is our seminary. We have a seminary here. Darul Fath is our seminary. We take it very seriously. We take the Ulum al-Sharia very seriously. We have amazing shuyukh, 2 of whom you can benefit from online. And right now we're going to be seeing a property that we may acquire that is more on the rural side of things. So people could go and study and think and focus and not have so many distractions. We're going to check that property out. And you guys could help us buy it, maybe. Let's take some QA just solely on the subject matter of... Just solely on this subject matter. Blogging Theology is in the house, someone said. MashaAllah, Blogging Theology is... I haven't checked. Let's check what he's posted these days. I did repost something that he had, which was really good. You know, one thing I'm telling you in Twitter these days, I really, it's not Blogging Theologist, Paul Williams. There you go. Free monotheist. Yeah, his Twitter account is Paul Williams. His YouTube is Blogging Theology. Wow. That's amazing. I'm reposting that one. The adorable image of a bobtail squid. You know, people, the design argument for a designer in the universe is the strongest, most intuitive one. All you need is a pair of eyes. That's all you need. Look at this creation and how it matches perfectly everything with everything else. You cannot believe. Now, it doesn't lead you to Islam. It doesn't even lead you to God. It just leads you to a knowledgeable and living creator, full of knowledge and willful too. Because where you see design, where you see uniqueness and variety, that indicates will, as opposed to a factory which just churns out things that are all the same. So check out Paul Williams' page. I wish I could ask him what his opinion was about. Oh, this is what he put up. Unless your ancestors look like this, and he's got a picture of Native Americans, you're probably an immigrant, right? And I reposted that with the comment saying, and who knows, thousands of years ago, who was in the American continent before Native Americans showed up? Who, like, this world is just people everywhere and constantly moving, and as if immigration is a new thing and England has just been whites forever. No, I mean, everyone's constantly moving. North, south, east, and west. Everything's constantly moving. All right, Blogging Theology is here. Can you give me your assessment on the origins, the source of these riots, what you think of these riots? Do you agree with my assessment is that this is a Mossad Zionist instigated clash, right, for their own purposes? And he says yes, he does agree with that. So as I said, the ingredients are there, but who's lighting the fire? Like, I know, for example, which of my two kids have the rivalry on which issue and which agree on which issue. I can stimulate either one if I was bad or good. I could stimulate how they get along. I could stimulate how they fight. And that's exactly what happens. That's what's happening here, right? And he's saying, it's more complex. All right, let's hear it if you have time to write it. He says more complex. While he's writing that, I'm going to read some other comments. Meanwhile, we come here predicated on the premise that we are the tenants and they decide the rules of society. 5 million tenants can't do anything, and not mention much of us plan to stay. I think you are a tenant if you're on some kind of a temporary visa. Citizenship does have to have a meaning. Once they give it to you, or permanent residency does have to have a meaning. Once they give you that, khalas. So the problem is with nationalism is that the people view it as ethnic, maybe religious nationalism, whereas the governments are secular. And the governments are merely operating on secular lines, not racial lines and not religious lines. But most people do need to feel the comfort of, hey, majority of the people here look like me, and the majority of people here believe what I believe, and people are comfortable by that. Hey, listen, can you give Blogging Theology a StreamYard chat? Give Blogging Theology a StreamYard link. He'll hop on live right now. He's here. Yeah, he said happy to explain live if possible. Yes, that's better off. So can you WhatsApp him a StreamYard link? He'll create the link for you right now. I'm going to take a 20-second timeout, and I'll be right back. Omar, why don't you read something for us? While Omar sets that up, I'm going to take a 20-second timeout. I'll be right back.
I'm sending the link, inshallah. Set that up in the meantime. Like Shadee's doing his thing. Let's see. Actually, we'll be back shortly for whoever didn't catch what he said. In the meantime, there we go. Alright. I've sent the link, inshallah. Click, yeah. What is the Hanafi finished? Is the Q&A finished? No, Dr. Shadee's he stepped out for a second. He'll be back in like 10, 20, 30 seconds, I think. So we'll have our brother Paul from Blogging Theology join us. And talk about this topic. I sent the link, by the way. If, our brother Paul is in the chat. Okay, there we go. One second, let's see. Assalamu alaikum. 1 second. Well, just give me 1 second while I set it up.
No problem.
I don't know if you hear me.
Am I able to upload a slide? Possible? Is that icons?
Okay, mashallah, we have our brother Paul from Blogging Theology. Do you hear me, by the way? I don't know if...
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I don't know if it's the audio or...
I can hear you
your
fine.
voice.
Thank you. Is it possible for me to upload a PDF slide?
It might be difficult. If you want to send it to me on WhatsApp, I can just go through it.
Okay, it is irrelevant. I'll send it to you now.
Okay, send it to me, Chol, and I can just go through it.
Only send it in an appropriate format. This is a file. There we go. Okay, you've got it?
Let's see. Yes, just give me a minute while I set it up. I see it, okay. That's great.
Great. Just one slide, that's all.
Okay, yeah, inshallah. Let me just set this up. So I don't know if you want to wait for Dr. Shadee or do you just want to...
Oh, really? I thought, is he coming back?
Yeah, he'll be back, inshallah.
Okay, maybe I'll turn my volume down.
Yeah, actually, there's an echo. He should be back in a
Someone
minute.
still got an echo. Is that echo still there?
It should be good now. Should be good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I guess we'll just wait for Dr. Shadee. In the meantime.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about what many people are calling the top 10 online instigators of the riots in the UK. Some of them will be known to people in the United States, people like Andrew Tate, obviously, globally famous. You may have heard of Tommy Robinson. You may even have heard of Nigel Farage of a political party here in the UK. There are lesser known figures like Paul Golding, Lawrence Fox, and Calvin Robinson, an Anglican clergyman. But all these people, some of them are from news agencies, have been stirring up hatred towards Muslims, demonizing Muslims for months now. And this is the mood music that's been created by politicians and media and individuals like Tommy Robinson on X. That is the context for these riots. These riots didn't happen out of the blue. They happened after much vitriol and propaganda against Muslims in mainstream media. It's been going on. And the government, the last government, we now got a Labour government. We had a Conservative government until recently. Our Home Secretary also openly demonized Muslims as basically saying we are the enemy within. So when you've got government and media saying these things, there's trouble brewing, and it's suddenly boiled over and is continuing as we speak. So that's
Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum assalam. Good to see you.
How's everything?
Alhamdulillah, very well. Hello from England.
I have a lot of brothers and friends that take your class, your course, mashallah. So very happy to see that blogging theology is developing into, so many things now. The interviews, your social media profile, and now there are classes that blogging theology you can register for and take advantage of that. And you're bringing a lot of benefit to the ummah, I have to say. A lot of benefit.
Thank you. It's not just me. It's Hassan Spiker, a Cambridge philosopher and a Muslim. And also we have faculty, including Dr. Ali Atai and others who also do sessions. It's the Blogging Theology Academy. Just Google Blogging Theology Academy.
Blogging Theology Academy, mashallah. You got all our support.
Yeah, got a website there which gives the prospectus. It gives the faculty. There's two courses. One on the history of the Bible and early Christianity, one I teach, and Hassan teaches metaphysics and logic. Which is, but I won't go into that now. We're not here to talk about that. But thank you for mentioning it.
All right, I heard a little bit about what you said. You basically said that this has been being cooked up.
Yeah.
Now, my view of it is that by making the Muslims the villain, voters will support a move to aid Israel in fighting whoever they're about to fight. There is war brewing between Iran, Lebanon, who knows who, and Israel. So is that thesis, does that have merit?
No, I think it does, as I said, but I think it's part of a bigger picture, to be honest. There's a domestic dynamic within Britain. It is not just the demonization of Muslims. Well, what we're doing, my view is, particularly since October, when Israel attacked Gaza, any form of pro-Palestinian protest or protest against the genocide has been characterized by the government as the enemy within, as an illegitimate, malevolent protest. Quite extraordinary in a democracy that legitimate, peaceful protests should be so slandered by the state. And I know this is not just in Britain, it's happening in Germany and in France, to some extent in America, in the universities. I'm aware of that, of course, in the media. But it has a particularly toxic form in the UK, in Britain, I think. And this has set the mood music for, because obviously most of the protesters have been Muslims, and many of us have waved the Palestinian flag in support. And there's peculiar ideas got around that we are waving foreign flags in Britain, and how this is unpatriotic. And how bizarre is this? Because if you go to government buildings here in Westminster, in London, you will see the Ukrainian flag flying from the Foreign Office, from the Home Office, the State Department, if you like, from Parliament. We're very happy to fly the flag of a foreign power, i.e. Ukraine, but we can't possibly fly one from Palestine. So what is this foreign flag logic there? It's completely hypocritical. So it's obviously serving a Zionist agenda, unfortunately, and the government here is unfortunately still very pro-Zionist, even though it's now a Labour government. So these riots the population have been inundated with this anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian, and anti-immigrant propaganda for some time now. And so the thing that set it off, and this is why, although your thesis has validity, it doesn't address the particular circumstances. We had, tragically, days ago, we had 3 children that were horribly murdered by someone who was characterized as a Muslim immigrant who had a Muslim name. Now, all of this is fake news. The individual who did it was a Welsh-born, UK-born man who comes from a Christian Rwandan family, who's not a Muslim. It doesn't have a Muslim name. It's nothing to do with Muslims anyway. And that now that's accepted, the name given to him, the Muslim name, is a fake name. He never had that name. But nevertheless, that was the tinderbox that really erupted and started riots. But they're continuing. Mosques are being attacked. Muslim women in hijab or niqab are being spat on or thrown acid. I mean, it's horrible what's happening. But what triggered it was this a ghastly massacre of these children, which had nothing to do with Islam or Muslims or immigrants or anything at all. That was the particular local circumstance. But yes, of course, the wider mood music that has made this whole thing toxic is being fed by these points that you made. I agree.
Yeah, this group. Is the EDL organizing in any formal fashion these riots?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not sure, but EDL technically doesn't really exist. Tommy Robinson is the kind of figurehead. But EDL, what we're dealing here, I think, are a network of online associations and groups that, contact each other via WhatsApp or by Twitter or X. Or it's not like a formal structure, but there are far-right groups like Patriotic Alternative, for example, and other groups which have been active for a long, long time against Muslims and against immigrants anyway. And now that they are revivified, that they are activating much more. And so attacks on Muslims, particularly, who have become the other, demonized, hated, and misunderstood and lied about. And I really want to stress how mainstream this is. The newspapers like the Times, the London Times, the Telegraph, the Daily Mail, drip, drip, drip over the months, and I read these papers every day, have been characterizing Muslims ever so subtly or not so subtly as the enemy within. And this is new. I don't remember this like a year ago or 2. Yes, of course, there was Islamophobia. This really is the next level.
Yeah,
there's something going on. And when you say what you have about your theory, your perspective, I think that's when what you say becomes very relevant. Something's going on. We're ratcheting up the rhetoric. Where new things are happening now.
I liked a lot what Loki brought to the table, and he said that a lot of the stuff that appears to be organic just from the people and from social media networks, it's actually cooked up, far more organized behind the scenes. But the way of influence these days is not to do what fascists did in the past and have one man of power and say, this is our government, this is what we're doing, but it's actually to feed hundreds, maybe thousands of micro influencers to feed them and make it look like it's the people's will. Right? This is what the people want.
Exactly. And I think we have influencers as well, like Tommy Robinson. That's not his real name, but he's very active indeed. Now he's in exile in Spain or Cyprus, I forget where. But he's a very potent figurehead. But through his tweets, but since he was let back on X by Elon Musk, where he was banned before, he's now got over 800,000 followers, and they retweet his stuff. Now he is known to be funded and supported legally, financially by Zionist groups. This is not a conspiracy theory; it's well documented. Powerful Zionist figures encourage and finance and support him legally as well.
Yeah.
unfortunately, people like Andrew Tate, who is a Muslim, and I'm not backstabbing him, this is a public record, he has made some very, very unfortunate statements in recent days, which appear to support this narrative.
So do you recall what he said? Because I wasn't on Twitter. I wasn't on X for a while. Then some people convinced me to say, just get back on a little bit. So I caught up. I got on when he was sort of backtracking his statements.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when it was. Maybe 2 or 3 days ago, maybe 2 days ago. He published a tweet which was like a Lego figure, a toy figure. But basically, it meant to portray a brown immigrant on a boat. Because the thing about boats is a kind of a trigger word in Britain. So we have the idea of immigrants coming on boats across the sea, across the English Channel, and just arriving here in big numbers, and that they're characterized as Muslim or brown, and this racial thing matters here. So that this picture he showed was this Lego-like picture of a young brown man with a knife in his hand, a big knife, and massive amounts of money on him as well on this boat. So the idea is he's a threat, a violent threat to Britain. He's brown. He's an immigrant. He's got lots of money, so he's not really poor. He's not like a desperate person at all. He's got a lot of money. And it was a really, really racist and Islamophobic trope. It triggered a lot of people. I have no idea why Andrew Tate did that. It really, I mean, he's got millions of followers. I mean, I've only got a humble, 500,000. This guy has got millions and millions of followers. And there has been a little bit of backtracking, but I don't know if he's actually repented of that and changed his mind. I don't know.
Let's talk about physically on the ground. British people have a decent economy. They got jobs. Shouldn't this thing die off as soon as the work week begins again?
Well, we'll see. I mean, there is a lot of hardship here amongst many people because of inflation and because of the post-COVID economy. We're better off than some places, this is for sure. But I keep on expecting it just to stop. The police are very active now in suppressing these, but these wildfires keep on breaking out all over the place. It's happening in the south of England, then the northwest, then the east, and one doesn't really know when they're going to happen next. It's like wildfires. It seems to be out of control, and so who knows when it will end. I think it will end. These riots will end. Of course they will. What happens next, I don't know. There is chatter in the Muslim community here. I'm told that Muslims are getting very worried. Some are thinking of leaving the country. There's talk of a very dark future coming about through changes in law. I don't know, but we're in a very difficult and it's not like, by the way, most places are dangerous. Most people, if you look around most places, you won't see anything, but there are these pockets of violence, and we're not used to that in Britain. It may sound odd. We don't live in a normally turbulent, violent society. We normally live in a fairly peaceful society, actually. So that's why it's so shocking.
If you're on Instagram, hop over to Sayyiduna Abu Bakr YouTube channel to see both of our faces and the full screen. The British have a temperament that is very mellow, that is very patient, that is very calm. Sometimes you'd say this is what contributes to them not winning in the World Cup and the Euro. They always come close, but they never win at all, right? They just don't have enough fire in them. So that's why this is very non-British-like. These types of
I don't buy that, and the reason I don't buy it is because we send arms to Israel who kill Palestinians. We had, at one point a quarter of the planet was controlled by us. If you're on the receiving end of our mild, benevolent, calm person, if you're on the receiving end of that in India or North Africa or even in the United States, we didn't seem so benign. I think there's
That's
kind of the story within, and there's a story without.
There was some white Muslims. They tell me to not mention this a lot, but I can't help but mentioning the irony that today British people are saying these people don't belong in our country. There's too many of them. And I can't help but...
What people don't belong?
Regular British, maybe right-leaning shopkeepers or what have you.
No. What people are they saying don't belong?
The brown people, immigrants, etc.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
How
do we respond to that? Well, easy. In the 1950s, the 1960s, in Britain particularly, the government, the state, invited people to come and work here in our NHS, our health system, in our factories, in our transportation system. They were invited and welcomed here because we were short of manpower. We needed people to work. At no point were they told that they were told to bugger off after 5 minutes. They were welcomed here. To turn around 30, 40, 50 years later and saying, we don't want you here anymore, doesn't work like that. These people they're hardworking, they've got families, houses, they've got children, they've got grandchildren now who've only ever known the United Kingdom, only ever known the British way of life. So I'm sorry, it's a bit late to complain when they were invited here in the first place. It doesn't work like that.
And the irony of it is that a lot of these subcontinent immigrants, their grandparents 80 years ago were saying the same exact thing about the British. Like both people's grandparents were saying the exact same thing, right? So this guy who's being told, you go back to Pakistan, you don't belong here. His grandfather was telling your grandfather, that, you know, right-leaning guy, get out of our country as a colonizer, right?
Yeah.
Things tend to boomerang back, and it takes three generations.
There is a bit of that. Yeah, there's just a bit, but the Empire Strikes Back, really. There's a bit of that. The name of there's the Star Wars film. But there's another thing here. When we, the British people, move in very large numbers, say to places like Spain, which we do, or France, or other places, do you know what we call ourselves? We call ourselves expats. Expatriates. Yeah. We don't call ourselves immigrants. Oh, no. Even though they live in large numbers in other countries. And by the way, when we live in these other countries, and I've seen it firsthand as someone who lives part-time in France, do most of us bother to learn French or English or Spanish? Many don't, actually. They form their little so-called expat communities and have their jokes about the foreigners, even though they're living in those countries. So we don't really practice what we preach about assimilation, about adopting culture and custom. Some do, but a lot don't. And it's very interesting how we have this double standard.
I read a statistic that there are nearly 30 to 40 million non-whites in England. 15 million were born outside of England. The rest were born in England. And of the 15 million that were born outside of England, 1 million are illegal. So that's out of 100 non-white looking people in England, 2 are illegal. And from the 2, all right, 1 out of every 4 of those is a child, right, is a baby. So that they came over and brought a child with them. So these numbers are...
I mean, there's also this problem. We're not just an isolated island off northwest Europe. We pretend to be and have been a superpower that has colonized and invaded a lot of places. And we have been the poodle to the United States in its invasion of Iraq, or invasion of Iran, of Afghanistan, Libya, and so on and so forth. We have created absolute mayhem globally. We're also got our hands involved in Syria, you name it, in terms of our hidden soft power as well. Yeah. So we have created a great deal of turmoil and death and destruction around the world. And then when some of these people had the temerity to seek refuge in our country, in our own backyard, we complain about it. Well, my answer is perhaps we should be less involved in invading usually Muslim countries, and then we would have less blowback. And blowback, not just in terms of immigration, but in terms of violent blowback, like terrorism. I mean, Tony Blair, when he was prime minister, when he obviously invaded Iraq with George Bush, and resulting in huge numbers, hundreds of thousands, millions of innocent people dying. When there was blowback in the streets of London in the form of terrorism, which obviously we condemn, he blamed what he called Islamism for this. He blamed ideologies, Islamic ideology. There was never any sense that this was an unfortunate but pretty inevitable consequence of our foreign policy. And this is how blind these people are. They think they can go around the world doing this without any consequences to their behavior. Any fool can see there's going to be blowback if you do this, except our prime minister, who for some reason knew better.
Just wanted to jump in.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Omar.
so previously, Brother Paul mentioned the top 10 instigators, and he had sent me a picture. Inshallah, if he wants to talk about it, I can put it on the screen, and then he can go over the picture.
All right, let's put that picture on, and these are the top 10 instigators, and we're on the Safina Society YouTube channel, folks. Instagram, it's my page, but on YouTube, it's the Safina Society. So why don't we put that picture on, Omar? All right, who exactly? We know who Tommy Robinson is. We know who Andrew Tate is. We've heard the name Nigel Farage, but tell us about these other characters.
Yeah, so this is Five Pillars, which is Britain's own Muslim news agency. Actually, it's the largest in Europe now. Definitely worth following Five Pillars on Twitter, and they have a website and so on. And they produced this a day or two yesterday, naming and shaming in a way these top online instigators of far right riots. So Tommy Robinson, the kind of alleged head of the English Defence League, he's now run away to Spain, of course. Farage is probably the guy, if any one individual is responsible for us leaving the European Union in Brexit, he was the politician responsible for that. He's always hinting about Muslims being unpatriotic or a danger or a threat from within Britain. He's constantly doing this in interviews on GB News, for example. Darren Grimes, another GB News journalist, Great Britain News. Andrew Tate, of course, knows no introduction. He's kind of British, I think, but he's obviously somewhere else at the moment. And these other people like Lawrence Fox is a washed-up actor who's now a politician. Paul Golding, he's the head of a very militant far-right group in Britain, very racist. And then there's this guy, the Reverend Calvin Robinson, who is an ordained clergyman, who used to be in the Church of England. He is viciously anti-Muslim and will slander Islam or Muslims on mainstream media, like GB News, for example. So these characters over months or years have been demonizing Muslims and setting the mood music for these riots, I would argue. So just give you a flavor, that's all.
Okay, good. Why don't I shift could you go back to me and him? Thank you. In 75 years, it's now the year 2100. Now, nobody knows the future, but we could forecast. Is there a significant mass of native British Muslims, such as yourself? And if you were to have children, grandchildren, this debate would be over. This discussion would be over.
Yeah, I think Islam will be the only monotheistic presence left in Europe. By that, I mean, out of all the Abrahamic faiths, Christianity, Judaism, obviously, which is a tiny, tiny faith anyway, these are all in radical terminal decline in the West. I say that with no happiness. We want some counterpoint to militant liberal secularism. But Islam will be left on its own, I think, to bear witness to Tawheed, to the prophets, to Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, peace be upon them all, with integrity, uncompromised, undiluted faith. And it will be the only one left. Yep. And so it will be, I think, the inevitable go-to religion when people want a tradition which is rooted in the prophets, rooted in history, rooted in revelation, rather than the kind of eclectic, composite kind of paganism or angel worship or these kind of new agey religions, which are very kind of superficial and are often demonic as well. Islam offers that great tradition of a global faith, and it will be the only one around. So I think that the prospect for Islam in Europe is very, very promising, actually, not just in Britain, but in everywhere, to be honest.
I believe that secularism has been unleashed on the world to expose what is false and strengthen what is true. And we're seeing that. Israel and Zionism, I don't think is Judaism at all. There's nothing to do with, it's maybe using Judaism, but if anyone's ever interacted with Torah Jews and listened to their lectures and their understanding, this is almost like a pagan. Israel is an idol and has no role in the actual genuine practice of Torah Judaism that is based on the Torah, not nationalism. They're expressly told not to do this, and they're told to be content in their living amongst the nations in their diaspora and to live well amongst the nations. And if they live well amongst the nation, they're guaranteed safety and to live peacefully. So nobody should conflate the Israeli flag with Judaism. It's almost like some like liberal or progressive Muslims started a country who don't pray, who drink, who observe zina, who commit zina and do all those things, but just call it the Khilafah, right? It doesn't make a difference what you call it. So Christianity, the Anglican Church in England, is now used as one of the rallying cries of the far right, that we're Christian.
Yeah, this rallying cry of the far right about Christianity. These people don't go to church themselves. They're not Christians. It's a cultural identity.
Yeah.
It's a kind of trope, but it has no spiritual or metaphysical commitment at all. And this is the great reality of it. It's all a facade. If these people are really committed Christians, I'll have more respect for them. But they're not even that. It's just a kind of ancient kind of identity politics that they're using to batter Muslims with. It has no deep roots in the faith of Jesus Christ. I mean, anything but.
And when it also doesn't really have much of a structure of your life. So I was listening to an anti-Christian nationalist Christian, and he was saying that Jesus came with a spirit, and he came with a way to live, and he didn't come to seek power or to tell anyone the details of their life. He just came with a spirit. But like, a spirit has to reside in a structure.
Yeah,
and
that's kind of Gnosticism, but you actually see this in the Bible. You see this in Paul's letters, where he explicitly says in one letter to the Ephesians in 2:15, that he believed that the law with its regulations and commandments had been abolished. This is Paul's letter to the Ephesians, chapter 2, verse 15. You can Google it now and read it for yourself. So this whole deen of life, this way of life that the Israelites had, Paul says was basically abolished. Yeah. And that's the word that's used in many translations. Now, of course, this is completely unfaithful to the teaching of Jesus himself, who in Matthew's gospel, at least, upheld the law and said that they should have deeper sincerity and attachment to the spirit of the law, but not in any way to not observe the letter of the law as well. You had to have both the spirit and the letter. And that's what you find in Islam, of course. You have the Sharia, but also the niyat is so vital. You can't just perform external acts and expect God to give you reward for that. There has to be the intention. And that's what Jesus emphasized again and again. But modern Christians, unfortunately, abandon Jesus' religion and are now following this kind of humanistic, spiritual philosophy, which bears very, very little resemblance to what Jesus actually preached himself, I think.
In closing, I'm going to have to say that if these riots continue, and if they escalate, I'm going to have to believe there are foreign hands involved.
I will make a prediction that they're not going to escalate. I will predict that they will die out, and they will die out in the coming days. The British state is now on alert. It's promising terrible retribution. There's even talk now of the state classifying many of these actions as terrorism, which is extraordinary, about time. So I don't see this carrying on much longer. That's my opinion.
Will Tommy Robinson go to jail for incitement?
I hope so. He's definitely belongs there. But no, but he's escaped abroad. So at the moment, he's beyond the reach of the law. But if he comes back, I'm sure I hope very much he will be prosecuted for incitement. Yeah.
Amazing to see this guy lighting the place on fire and swimming in a beautiful pool in Greece or Spain or wherever he is. It's inane. Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on, and I love this impromptu. We needed to talk about it because you're on the ground there.
To talk about this because in Britain, for those in other parts of the world, because I know it's hit the news and it affects the Ummah because the Ummah is under attack, at least on this island at the moment. Inshallah, it will be over soon, but that doesn't mean it's back to normal. There are things happening. I mean, you need to watch this space carefully, I think.
There's nothing. There's nothing in London, is there?
This is true. The biggest concentration of Muslims is here in London, where I am now. and I don't get any sense of anything happening here, but it's happening in other cities throughout the country, and I'm not sure why it's not kicked off here. It could be just the sheer number of Muslims. We've got a Muslim mayor, and I don't know why, but
the cosmopolitan mentality too.
Yeah, things are much more relaxed here. There's live and let live. What women can wear hijab or niqab. There's, as far as I'm aware, very little of any aggro here, but around other parts of the country, there clearly is.
All right, thank you very much. We'll be in touch. Jazakallah khairan. Thanks for your insights, and we'll see what happens. And by next Monday, we'll have a good idea of where we stand, inshallah.
Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khair. Best of luck. Tawfiq. So, all right, there you had a nice little treat for us to have Brother Paul Williams come on and give us his insights. Obviously, he is from the country, and he knows best what's going on. Better than us, but there you have it. I think we'll give it another week. Hey, that's good, Omar. That's good. Yeah, give it another week, and we'll see if this thing escalates, which he thinks it won't. But if it does, foreign powers, 100% foreign provocateurs, and there's only one foreign provocateur that's going to do this, right? The only one. All right, what else we have here? And if maybe final questions. Try to stick to the subject here. I'm trying to stick to the subject. There's a discussion of Imam Nawawi. Was he an Ash'ari? He was an Ash'ari, of course. Everyone knows that. As Abid Lutfi says, it is a known fact. That is true, but we're not here to discuss that. Okay. And you know what? I really, these days, I'm like having an allergy to these theological debates. I'm done with them. Yeah. Let's focus on what benefits the ummah. Huh? Khalas. And khalas, we have to have a brain. Look at the world around you. Have some common sense. I do believe there's a right and wrong on certain things. But look at the world around you. Western people are coming into Islam. They're learning about Islam. There's literally fires everywhere on every corner of the earth. There's war and fighting in every corner of the earth. When you're going to say something that's has the maximum benefit and is most appropriate to what's happening. Like, you imagine you had a fire over there and someone says, by the way, the linen's not ironed, right? It's not an appropriate comment. It may be true, but it's not the appropriate comment.
They're rijal for everything. Like, okay, we're here to discuss this. If you want to know about that, there's another place. Go to those people.
We're going to have an online track just in Aqidah very soon. Just in Aqidah, in the English language. And we're going to have Dar al-Fath here to come and live here and study the Aqidah that we teach, which is the Ash'ari Aqidah, the Maturidi Aqidah. And with full respect to the Hanbali Aqidah as well. Sheikh Murad is studying it and learning it. But on a day-to-day basis, on Twitter, online, there has to be an elevation of the discourse to what is relevant, what is beneficial to the majority of people. Okay. Okay. Next, we'll take one or two more questions on this subject, if there are any. Do the British... Funny how Elon Musk taking this stance against these immigrants. Well, let's not forget where he's from. He's from South Africa. Those immigrants weren't that nice either, right? And those natives rose up. But he didn't support them. That's for sure. Can you suggest an English book to learn Maliki fiqh for a layman? Yes, there is a book by Sheikh Ramin Suri. You can find it on Amazon. Just type in Rami Nsur. Nsour. What is the minimum haircut required for a man to exit Umrah in the Maliki school? He has to cut a little bit, like a unmula, of all of his hairs. Like this much of all of his hairs. So he can't just cut a clip. He would have to just get a haircut, basically. Get a haircut. The guy will just do it really quickly for you. Trim you up. When does an individual resort to violence? When he's violated against in Islam and in secular law. If they violate against you, then you are able to resort to violence. Hey, Omar, does that lamp turn yellow at all, ever? Or would we have to get a new bulb for that? Yeah, let's get a new bulb for that. Not the color. You can change the intensity, but not the color. Do Maliki allow women to go to Hajj without a mahram? Yes. Specific awrad for the current infamous situation. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil 450 times a day. What is Sheikh Asrar's YouTube? I didn't see that. YouTube live these days. Somebody's saying it is a very close, similar subject to what we're talking about.
He just does random Q&As.
Oh, he does QAs. That's good. That's why he's saying, did you inspire those? I don't know if I inspired them. I would love to say that he was inspired by nothing but facts to answer QAs. I think QAs are great. You got to do QAs. Even if you use the same question 50,000 times, which we do. But I think it's important. You got to have, like, why are you here? You're here to benefit people. But also to guide their questions too, right? If you're still asking stuff about, there are certain masail, if you're harping on it too much, your teacher needs to tell you that this you're misdirected. Your question indicates misdirection. That's part of it. It's not just to answer the question that you're given. I have an opportunity to study in Medina for little cost. Can I study as long as I've grounded myself in Aqidah? I can't tell you yes or no because I don't know what they study in the University of Medina. I know that what their official Aqidah is, but I can't answer any more than that because I don't know how far do they go in that? What do they say about the madhabs? What do they say about usul? How do they teach fiqh? Can't answer those questions. You should ask Tom Ficchini for that. Could you give a brief explanation why Maliki considered dog saliva pure? Because the hadith is in the siyaq of the bowl. You don't pray with bowls, not the clothes. If a dog licks your bowl, drinks from your bowl, wash it out 7 times once with dirt, meaning something rough. And therefore, the understanding of the early ulama in Medina was this was purely for hygienic purposes. If it was najis, 1 washing would be sufficient. That's number 1. Okay? 1 washing would be sufficient. Secondly, it says the bowl. Do not say your garment. It's the bowl. Ina'i ahadikum, the hadith says.
I guess the Hanafis combine that because then we say 1 is enough, like it's enough. But because that's from Sayyiduna Abu Hurairah, and he's not from the fuqaha of the Sahaba. We say 7 is just like, it's not like, okay, that's what gets rid of it. It's just like, okay, you can do 7.
7 for mubalagha, or
Yeah,
not like
not.
make sure you clean it and with something that's rough to get the effect of that dog saliva.
Yeah, but
What do
that's
the
not like
Hanafis say?
We say like 7 is not the number that gets rid of the
Yeah.
najis, right? The najasa.
Yeah.
But like less than that is sufficient.
Mm-hmm. If I read Surah Al-Mulk once in my life, would I get protection in the grave? No, that Surah Al-Mulk is required for protection in the grave. The more you recite it, the more you get that protection. Preferably every night. Then another question says, are there accommodations to Darafat? We are opening a basement up downstairs for people to reside in. But that's not going to be enough for Darafat. It's just housing 4 people. Can you eat cat? Maliki schools makruh. Scourged to eat cat. Is it mandatory to pray Fard Salah in the masjid according to the Maliki madhab? No, it's mandub. if and if my memory serves correct, it's mandub when you can hear the adhan. Insofar as you can hear the adhan. How do you control lucid dreaming? I don't think you can control dreaming. Dream is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But usually people say that they have a lot of good dreams when they're avoiding sins, doing a lot of remembrance, not overeating, sleeping well. So their body and their heart are in line, and their ibadah is in line. Then Allah gives them a gift of a beautiful dream about maybe the future or something about, something nice to see. And that's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can you explain why? And Sunnis would say Abu Bakr Siddiq is superior to all the Sahaba. The reason we say that is, number one, the usul of that is we can't ever say this. We cannot ever say this. The Sahaba themselves, though, can judge themselves. And that's the usul. The usul here, how can we make a judgment about the companions? That's the usul. But since the Shia came in and said that Sayyidina Ali is the greatest of Sahaba, that forced the Sunni theologians to think about the question. Now it's a question. Now some people are saying who's the most superior. If we're going to do that, then they said, hold on a second, they agree with that original usul that, or went back to that, you don't have any right to judge companions. So number one, they said, did the Prophet, peace be upon him, say who is the greatest of companions? Well, there is a narration that there is the greatest upon whom the sun has risen after the Anbiya is Abu Bakr. But even more so than that, there is ijma' of the companions to choose Abu Bakr as their imam at a time when you chose your most pious, your most virtuous, your most worthy. Unlike today, you may be the most worthy leader, but you didn't memorize the Quran. And there may be a 25-year-old who memorized the Quran. Nobody talks to him about anything else, but he memorized and he'll lead the prayer. Today we have that split. Today we have a split where we can have a ruler who is not a mujtahid or a mufti. But in that time, the Quran and the Sultan had not split yet. And so when they chose somebody, that is the most dominant, clear, explicit expression that he's their best. And there was ijma', and nobody disputed that Abu Bakr would be their ruler. Then after they did the same after Umar. So the most important thing is to know the usul. The method of determining who is the most worthy is not going to come from us. The strongest evidence is the consensus of the companion, who they choose to be their leader. And Allah knows best. What awrad can a husband and wife say during pregnancy and or delivery? In the moment of delivery, إذا السماء انشقت وأذنت لربها وحقت وإذا الأرض مدت وألقت ما فيها وتخلت. That fourth verse means this is about the earth, right? But the wording of the fourth verse is it emptied what's in it or released what's in it and became empty. So just repeat that that fourth verse. Ladies and gentlemen, I gotta go. You'll be hearing and seeing if this property is any good for Dar al-Fath. جزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Kalbe şiir